Hi guys and girls, I'm Karel from the Story Department. In this video I'm going to build a case and hopefully encourage you and convince you that you should be watching classic movies. And by classic I don't mean the instant classics that you saw last year or a few years ago. In that respect maybe Avatar is a classic, Titanic definitely, but I'm talking old movies. I'm talking movies that were on when your parents went to the cinema, when they were young. Today I'm going to look at two films, one American Paris 1951 and the other Citizen Kane 1941. At the end of this video I'm going to give you 3 good reasons why you should watch old films if you want to operate in the film industry. So our first film we're going to look at is classic musical, 1951, Vincente Minnelli directed, with Gene Kelly starring, and Leslie Caron, his counterpart. It is a fairly naive fairy tale set in Paris soon after World War II. There's this American GI who's stuck there. He loves Paris and wants to try and make a living as a painter. He struggles, but then bumps into this rich lady who's going to help him. She's got an agenda, obviously. She's more interested in him than his art. And then he bumps into this local girl who really wins his heart, and obviously that's where the drama unfolds. I had seen American in Paris many times, loved it, one of my favorite films of all time. And then I watched it again with my 13-year-old son, and something shifted. Something was plain off, and I'm going to show you what it is. It started here in this bar scene.
Come on, Jack.
So we have Gene Kelly on the right and the hostess on the left.
Do you happen to know who she is? No.
He's ignoring his hostess. She's appalled.
Oh, Tommy, I'm very anxious for you to see Jerry's work. Perhaps if you like it, you can get him a mention on the art page.
Nothing to it. Lisa. What? Her name is Lisa.
Oh.
Now this is plain rude behavior, obviously.
We haven't for years.
Yes, excuse me, Jerry.
And it gets worse. He goes staring at the girl. Speaking of awkward, and this is only the start. You know, in some ways, the Me Too movement kind of ruined my viewing pleasure here, rightfully so. And I'm hoping that I didn't need that movement to make this happen. But the behavior of Gene Kelly here is really in the tradition of, if I push hard enough, I will get what I want. That may have worked in the 1950s. Today, I don't think so much anymore. So let's have a look where this leads. And I warn you, it's getting even more uncomfortable. Oh my God. Can you believe this was possible back then?
I didn't see you sitting here.
I'm afraid
Gosh, what a pleasant surprise. Why, just the other night my wife and I were talking about you and wondering what happened to her. I'm Jerry Mulligan. Lisa, let's go around the floor once for old time's sake. Do you mind?
No, but you do.
Excuse me.
He forces her into a dance.
Well, you're certainly not without your nerve.
Now, don't get angry. This was perfectly harmless. I haven't been able to take my eyes off you since I walked into this smoke factory.
I only let you do this because I didn't want to make a disturbance.
And I don't have a wife. I just threw that in to make it look respectable.
Oh, that was very considerate. Now, please, I would like to return to my table.
In a minute.
So you see, there is no saying no to this guy. It's awkward. It is unnerving. He is an absolute douchebag, a slime ball. But back then, he was a star. Women loved it, and all they wanted was be in her place, I guess. So let's go to the next stage, still the dance. And yeah, I think after this we'll have had enough, and you'll understand why this film is now no longer, sadly, on my list of favorite films.
Lisa, I swear this is the first time I've ever done anything like this.
Yeah, right.
Well, at least as a civilian. I just had to meet you.
Look, monsieur, I don't know what type of girl you think I am, but I'm not. And now I would like to return to my friends.
I thought you were bored with them. You sure looked it.
You should see me now.
Ouch.
The music has stopped.
The elements are against me.
How many signs does this guy need?
You,
to get the message. And you know, it just stays kind of uncomfortable for the rest of the film because of this. Obviously, it's a fairy tale. These things don't happen and are not supposed to happen, but I don't think you get away with it anymore these days. That said, it's still a love story that structurally follows a model that you can use these days. It has the kiss around the midpoint, which, you know, back then was the sex at 60. And after that midpoint, everything starts unraveling. It's a good film to study and to learn from, because if you talk to people in the industry, they may have seen this film and you can use it as a structural reference. All right, let's move up to another film that I also recently rewatched. I had seen a number of times. Was never really all too high on my list. My favorite film of all time is another Orson Welles film, Touch of Evil. But so I did watch Citizen Kane again with my son. I think it's rated 12 and up. So we watched it together, and here I had a very different experience. I thought it was a very interesting film in the sense that there are certain sensibilities in this film that have changed over the years, but I find it still fresh and it still holds the tension. And in a minute, I'm going to show you a scene that could be interpreted differently depending on the times in which you live, but it doesn't have that awkwardness. You won't be able to discard it based on any sort of value system. Now, Citizen Kane, the main character, Charles Foster Kane, played by Orson Welles, and based on the historical figure of William Randolph Hearst. In fact, it was a composite character. There are a few other historical precedents. I think Howard Hughes was one of them. But primarily, the story is about the media mogul, William Hearst, who built a whole empire, starting with a small newspaper. The story starts with his death, and if you have seen the film, obviously it all revolves around the word rosebud, which was the last word spoken by this man, and this enigmatic word, nobody knows what it means. So there's a story about this journalist going to investigate, and that's really the driver. That's the plot driving this movie. It's a mystery. We're going to try and figure out what that word means. In the course of this investigation, we see a biopic. We see the story of Charles Kane, building his empire, but at the same time struggling to achieve happiness. You know, he's very powerful, has a lot of money, can buy pretty much anything he likes, but ultimately ends up as a lonely man, because the things of the heart you cannot buy. And so in that respect, it is still fresh. It's modern. It doesn't have a happy ending in the sense that it is it's bittersweet. There is some ending to it, and that we figure out what the meaning of that word was. We figure it out, the journalist doesn't. So there's a lot of irony going on. The scene we're going to watch is the scene in which Charles is being taken away from his parents. His mother wants to adopt him out to this foster parent who will raise him until the age of 25, at which point he will get access to a large amount of money. And that's obviously when his empire starts building. In this scene, it's winter. We see him play with his sled. Obviously, that is a subliminal setup for the ultimate resolution of the mystery. But there's something else going on. I want you to look at the behavior of both parents. How does the mother, what's the mother's stance around her son going away, and what is the father's attitude towards that?
I've arranged for a tutor to meet us in Chicago. I'd have brought him here with me, but...
One example of innovative filmmaking. Cameras seem to be inside, now we're
You make it all
exterior.
by yourself, my lad.
Maybe I'll make some teeth and whiskers.
This is Mr. Thatcher, Charles.
Oh.
How do you do, Charles?
He comes from the east.
Pa!
Hello, Charlie.
Charles?
Yes, Mummy?
Mr. Thatcher's going to take you on a trip with him tonight. You'll be leaving on number 10.
That's the train with all the lights on it.
You going, Mom?
Well, no, your mother won't be going right away, Charles, but she'll...
The dynamics are
Where am I
interesting.
going?
You're going to see Chicago and New York and Washington, maybe. Ain't he, Mr. Thatcher?
He certainly is. I wish I were a little boy going on a trip like that for the first time.
Why aren't you coming with us, Mom?
We have to stay here, Charles.
You're going to live with Mr. Thatcher from now on, Charlie. You're going to be rich. Your ma figures, well, that is, me and her decided this ain't the place for you to grow up in. You'll probably be the richest man in America someday, and you ought to
won't be
get an
lonely,
education.
Charles.
Lonely, of course not. Why, we're going to have some fine times together. Really we are, Charles. Now, shall we shake hands? Oh, come. I'm not as frightening as all that, am I? Now, what do you say? Let's shake.
Why, Charles.
Charles, you almost hurt me. What's that under his
Charlie.
pillow? It's that to just lay with.
You're... I'm sorry, Mr. Thatcher. What that kid needs is a good thrashing.
That's what you think, is it, Jim?
Yes.
That's why he's going to be brought up where you can't get at him.
So there you go. That's an interesting setup. Did you see how the boy first spontaneously ran to the father? So there was no aversion, there was no fear, and then he went to his mother. So that kind of indicated that when the mother referenced the fact that the father hits him at the time, 1941, that was not necessarily frowned upon in the same way it is today. So the real negative force up to that point, because there's a short part of the scene before the segment that you just saw, where the mother seems very cold. She wants her son to leave, but the father doesn't want to. The father wants to keep his son around. So we initially empathize with the father until we then hear that the father beats the son. And I think that duality is very powerful. Orson Welles has always kind of shown both sides of humanity without casting a stone. So that the fact that the father says the boy deserves a thrashing is not necessarily as negative as it would have been or as it would be today. Very powerful setup, very powerful scene, beautifully filmed. The execution, the performance was great. Did you see how the dialogue overlapped? These actors were very used to playing together. They were the members of the Mercury Theatre group that Orson Welles was the driver of, who also did the famous War of the Worlds radio broadcast. So the Citizen Kane, still today, all those, what are we, like 70, more than 75 years later, still very fresh, very intriguing. And although the lead or the main character it's all about, not really a very likable character, here is a picture where he's portrayed with Adolf Hitler, to clarify that this is not the type of person you want to aspire to be. And I'm going to show you one more scene before we conclude, one scene in which we see what drives Kane. And although he's not a likable character, he still is what I always promote, what I always advocate as being the number one trait of your leads. They need to have drive, they need to have purpose, they need to have very strong willpower. And I think Kane comes across as just that. He pursues a number of things in life. He doesn't achieve them all, but I think the attraction, the appeal, and our empathy is not so much for the hero who achieves it all, but for the character who fights at all costs to achieve what they want to achieve. So let's have a look at this this final brief scene in which we see the driven Charles Foster Kane.
Galleons of Spain off Jersey coast. Is that really your idea of how to run a newspaper?
I don't know how to run a newspaper, Mr. Thatcher. I just try everything I can think of.
Charles, you know perfectly well there's not the slightest proof that this armada's off the Jersey
Hello,
coast.
Mr. Bernstein.
Excuse me, Mr.
Can you
Kane.
prove it isn't?
This just
Mr.
came in.
Bernstein, I'd like you to meet Mr. Thatcher.
How do you do, Mr. Thatcher?
Leland, Mr. Thatcher, my ex-guardian.
From
We have
Cuba.
no secrets from our readers, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Thatcher is one of our most devoted readers. He knows what's wrong with every copy of the Enquirer since I took over. Read the cable.
Girls delightful in Cuba, stop.
Could send you prose poems about scenery, but don't feel right spending your money. Stop. There is no war in Cuba. Signed, Wheeler. Any answer?
Yes, dear Wheeler, you provide the prose poems. I'll provide the war.
That's fine.
Great quote there. It reminds me of The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance to a degree. But isn't that like the birth of fake news? And this was not invented for Citizen Kane. It was effectively a reflection of the way William Randolph Hearst ran his newspapers and how he got the power he ultimately had. So you also saw Joseph Cotton briefly, another actor Wells played with, again later, 8 years later to be precise, 1949, in The Third Man. another amazing classic, which I highly recommend you watch, because it has so many clues to how you can mythologize a particular story. And I will bring that film into my videos very soon, because it's another one that I kind of discovered what it was really about only after watching it 5 or 6 times. So here we go. Why should we watch classic films? Why should you watch them repeatedly? First of all, you know what? They're great. Some of these are so good. They're far superior to much you get at the box office today. I'm not talking about the values or the content, but even the storytelling sometimes is faster than what we have in our present day storytelling, because much detail, much attention goes obviously to the quality of execution and you know what special effects you can see these days. It's mind-blowing. But when those tools were not available back then, there was a lot more pressure on storytelling, and the storytelling did the heavy lifting, and that worked. So there's a lot of classic films where the storytelling is superior to what you get to see at the box office these days. So number one reason, many of these films are just way, way better. And that's not just me speaking as an old fart. My 13-year-old agrees. It's really about getting used to that and making the choice, because obviously when you're watching television and you have to choose the choice between iTunes and Netflix and Amazon Prime, and you have your Blu-rays, and most of those films are new, you're going to watch the new films. But every now and then, why not, you know, insert a classic and learn from those? So first of all, they're great. Watch them for your pure joy. Secondly, you can learn from them. They solved problems that you will encounter in your writing. And people in the industry who have done their work will know how to resolve these issues. So if you then don't manage to resolve those issues, it is glaringly obvious that you haven't done your homework. So these films show you how to tell stories. Every story problem that you will see in your writing will have occurred previously, and by watching and studying these classics, it gives you a toolbox to tell your stories more efficiently and more easily in a way. So yes, you can watch these classics to improve your storytelling skills. Second reason. Third reason, when you go out to pitch your stories, and you communicate, you discuss, you debate your points with executives in the industry, you need to have a reference base. You need to have your comps. It works to have recent comps in order to demonstrate that what you are telling effectively speaks to a present-day audience. But on the other hand, many people in the film industry are lovers of cinema from the olden days and will have seen many of these classic films. By being able to introduce those in your conversation, it will show you that you have this breadth of knowledge and interest, and you will come across as more skilled and more reliable. You will be able to build a better case. So that kind of goes back to that second reason. I hope you don't really need any reasons. I hope you just watch films because they are there, and because of your own curiosity. So that was it today. Old films. We looked at American in Paris. Have you seen it? What did you think about it? Tell us in the comments below. Same for Citizen Kane. Is it your number one movie? Because it's on many lists as the best film ever made. Do you like it? What did you like about it? So let us know. Any other topics you want us to cover? Put that in the comments below as well. And I hope you'll be there again for our next video very soon. In the meantime, please subscribe to our channel. I really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Look, I chopped off my own head. If you subscribe to this channel, I promise I will chop off someone else's head, and you can choose whose. In the meantime, why not check out these truly interesting videos here, and don't forget to subscribe.